start with the conference again. So, I will jump to the next one. There's a change, there's a switch.
Are you sure?
Huh?
There is a change, are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. It's
Yeah,
not,
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because we were supposed to have Kathleen, but you don't seem like Kathleen, so I will scroll down to you. Yeah, we have Fabrizio Rizzonelli. Please. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to prepare a fun fact about you. No, they all told me fun facts about them. But the only thing you said, you founded the basketball team a few years ago. So that's your funny story.
Sure.
Okay. And then she will talk about developer experience. So please enjoy.
Okay. Okay, it's super hard. Where are the speaker notes? Oh no. I can see them, okay. Okay, where is the button, guys? To the right, I can see it. Okay. Ah, perfect. Great. Okay. And now I can't see shit. Voila. Perfect. So, hello everyone, and thanks to Grusp for having me here. It's my first time with such a great crowd. Also, it's my first speech in English, and it's almost 5 p.m. I will forget words, make mistakes. E ora raga, datemi una mano, vi prego. So, my name is Fabrizio Rizzo, but everybody calls me Rizzo. And I'm an engineering manager at Belka. Belka is a digital product studio. We design and build products for startups and tech companies, and we are based in Trento. We love apps. We have built quite few interesting products over the years. I've personally worked with several apps, like the Facturing Cloud app, which has 1,500,000 monthly active users, and the Spiagge.it app, also the Dependenting Cloud app, and the Switcho app. However, what we are all about in Belka is people. We love memes and Mamma Mia Pizzeria. I think it makes us better partners to our clients. It makes our products better, and also makes Belka a better place to work. And if you think about it, the connection between people and coding is developer experience. What does actually developer experience mean? I found this great quote on the Red Hat blog, which identify and describe DevX as the mix of interactions and feelings that a developer has while working on a piece of code. And today we are going to see the developer experience from my perspective. So it's super opinionated, and my perspective as a React Native engineer. Just a question. How many of you have tried React Native? Oh, great. And how many have been using it in production? Cool. And for at least 5 years? Oh, great. Let's have a chat later, please. So why we choose React Native as a framework? Because the claim is to learn once and write anywhere. So ambitious. It's definitely so ambitious. However, with such a great goal, and how the complexity of several platforms like Android, iOS, web, even desktops, working together can be simplified to enhance the developer experience. Let's move on to my journey. That's how I began. I was building Android apps with Java. I was using Kotlin for some side projects. I had some expertise as a web developer. I've worked with Angular.js, yep, JS, the first one, and also with React as well. And I never touched iOS and Xcode before jumping on React Native, fortunately. And of course, I was loving to build mobile applications, and I still do nowadays. You're going to see this chart throughout my presentation quite a lot. As I described to you the various steps in the process, you will see how it did affect my emotion and my happiness level throughout this 5 years long journey. And also how my confidence with the framework changed. If we move up, it means that I'm happy with React Native. And if we go down, the opposite. Let's move to the first step. And not a great start. I was a little bit skeptical about React Native. The claim was, it seems to me too hard to achieve, and I was concerned about the performances of my apps and how could I manage things like navigation, which is really tied to the different platforms, and all this kind of stuff. My journey begins in 2018. And 5 years ago, with my first project, which was the Factoring Cloud app we talked before, I got my first touch with React Native. Although, I think I didn't have any clue about what developer experience means at the time. So what I did, I jumped to the documentation, installed all the React Native CLI, dependencies, Android SDK, Xcode developer tools, everything needed. And I initialized my first project, jumped to the folder, and launched my first script. And the simulator opened on my screen. Cool. Then I started doing the things that we do as developers, smashing the keyboard, creating files, components, interfaces, and all the building blocks of our applications. And then after saving the first files, this is what I saw and what I noticed, the fast refresh. It felt really good, really, really good. I was coming from the native environment from Android, and compared to the instant run from Android, fast refresh, it felt amazing. If I recall right, also, I think it was called fast reload at the time, and seeing the changes almost instantly was superb. Also, another great thing, the React ecosystem, React Stateflow, the lifecycle methods and events are awesome compared to the native patterns. And I usually build features with less files compared to what I would have done with the Android. So it's a great start. I was pretty much impressed from the framework. So far, so good. Then, after the first year, few projects delivered and released to the stores, my experience started to get messy. Why? First of all, I felt frustrated, and after 12 months, I realized that fast refresh was suffering similar issues as Android did, especially if you had errors on the native layer of React Native. You couldn't use the fast refresh anymore. You need to rebuild the whole application from scratch, and it was you would waste a lot of time, which, as Alessandro told before, we don't like to waste time. And the same was happening when you were working with physical devices, because you need to connect the device to the Mac with a cable, and if for some reason you touch the cable, you lose the connection, and you need to rebuild everything and wait a lot of time. That sucks, definitely. I wasn't happy. Another crucial part of the developer experience, I think, is debugging. Debugging is hard. It's really hard. It's hard with every technology. And I think that with React Native is even harder. Why? The packager is executed on the machine, so the remote debugger is running on your Mac or on your local machine, while the app is running on the device or the simulator. So that led to few problems, especially back in the days. Printing object in console wasn't straightforward. You had some issue with the serialization, and seeing the error coming from the native layer was really difficult. And also imagine having to print a runtime error without knowing, and seeing a runtime error without knowing what's going on your app. There was no built-in ability to debug the networking. I mean, you build a front-end framework, you would like to see what's happening on your API calls, and you couldn't do that. Like if you come from the React and web development, you are used to the Chrome debugger, which is definitely great, and all the other tools. And if you were using Redux, tracking actions with tools like Redux DevTools, it couldn't be possible. So I felt more or less like this. Another weird behavior that I had is with touchables, which are the buttons on the React Native platforms, and the detection of normal and long press event, which is basically a small tap or a long tap on your phones. And if you had different daytimes configured on your phone compared to the one of your host, of your Mac machine, basically every long touch will just pop a red screen error on your phone. And imagine debugging an application and working on an application, and every touch you see an error, and you need to close it. Awful. Debugging experience was really bad, especially a few years ago. Another great topic. Did anyone had to manage code signing? Android, iOS? Okay. I mean, if a lot of you are using React Native, you don't manage the code signing. Well, I unfortunately did. And for Android, I was wondering where should I store my key store files. Key stores are the files that are required to sign an Android app. And you need them to upload the app to the Google Store, and also you need to keep them to be able to publish updates on your app. So storing them in the Git repo is definitely bad practice, and you should find a way to basically keep them synced and shared with your team and the CI/CD machine. Moving forward to Apple. How many of you had the pleasure to work with these? The pleasure. So you already know what's coming. Code signing is tough. Understanding how the portal works and the system that Apple built is really difficult, especially if you come from the web development. In few words, really few words, you need to generate a certificate for the whole team, a debug or release certificate, and then you need to create a provisioning profile, which is a file that links together your developer account with the certificate. And you need that profile to build and release your iOS application. The problem with profiles is that if one of your colleagues need to add a feature to the app, like push notification, Apple Pay, and all this kind of stuff, you need to invalidate all the profiles across the whole team and need to regenerate them. And same issue for your CI/CD pipelines and the machine on where you are building and releasing the app to users or the QA or whatever. Also, imagine teach this whole system to a new engineer, maybe a junior one, which doesn't know anything about iOS. I love it. Of course not. It took a lot of time to understanding the whole steps involved, and I think it should be easier for us engineers to start coding without having to manage all these complex steps. Then another great topic, manual linking. How many of you have had to add dependencies with manual linking? Okay. Was it fun? Well, from my perspective, Nope, of course. How do we usually manage dependencies in the most common frameworks? For Node, we have npm, and so with yarn or npm we can install a package. With Android, we have Gradle. With iOS, we have CocoaPods. Well, on React Native, you basically have a mix of these three words. And if you need to install a native SDK written in Java or Objective-C, you need to install the native package itself, and you need to add it to the Gradle file, or you need to open Xcode and link the dependency, and then you need to install the dependency from npm, which is the JS layer to communicate with native models. These had to be done manually by the developer. Why? Or by running utility CLI called the React Native Link, provided from the React Native framework, which failed quite a few times. A lot of native dependencies were conflicting with each other. Understanding the errors in build phases in the left screen of your Xcode was nearly impossible. And all the constraints are a lot of knowledge that you need to learn and to make it yours to understand what's going on. It was a nightmare. Emotional damage, exactly. I reached the bottom line. This is probably the time where a lot of developers quit on the technology, and I didn't like the problems I have to deal with. I think it's near the time that Airbnb made the post that we are going to create React Native, similar to the timeline. However, one positive note, even though everything looked horrible, I still managed to release an app on iOS, and I was delivering a project which indeed felt great. So yes, we can move up a little bit. Some good news. I'm generating something that users are actually using and loving. Then 2020, to me, was the turning point with React Native. React Native did a great thing. They released 0.60 version, which brings a great improvement, and it was auto-linking. Auto-linking, as you can imagine from the word itself, is basically the manual linking done automatically by the framework. So every dependency that we install via Yarn or Node is automatically linked. It's no longer needed to touch native files. Such a relief. A lot of complexity is removed, and you have one less thing to worry about. Then I discovered another great tool, which is Expo. How many of you know Expo? Okay. Well, Expo was around probably from almost the same time of React Native, even though in the first few years it was a little bit difficult to use it in production. But Expo is a framework that helps developers build cross-platform apps with React Native. And how does actually Expo work? You need to generate a project with a CLI and their SDKs, and you don't need to bother about the React Native dependencies. So you can just run and develop your app for a Windows machine. You don't need to have a Mac. You don't need to install Android SDK on your laptop. And how does it work? You need to install an app on your device or simulator, which is called Expo Go. And then you can connect it directly to your packager, and you just send the JS layer over the phone. When you need to generate a release build, you have a command line that bundles together the standard native layer of Expo with your JS implementation. What I love the most about Expo is that you could develop with physical devices without connection cables. Also, you can share a link with people, colleagues, even clients if you're crazy, and they can watch you build the app live. And also, you don't need to manage the signing and certificate part, at least while working on the debug side and the developing experience, which is amazing. No more pain due to cables, signing, and this kind of stuff. Although not all that glitters is gold, even Expo has some limitations. You need to stick to the Expo ecosystem and its dependencies and all their environment. And like React, you have the eject button or the eject command. And if you do the ejection, you lose everything. You need to manage, again, the native side by yourself and all this kind of stuff. Few reasons why back in the days Expo was kind of limited is that you couldn't add the support to the push notifications, and there was no way to add a custom SDK or your native SDK to the Expo ecosystem. So indeed, I mean, I'm still happy, but I would like to feel it like it was better for my experience. Then time goes by, and in 2021, Expo has improved a lot. Several changes happened. First and foremost, you don't need to eject anymore because they have plugins have arrived. Also, Expo application services, which is called AAS, was released, and the organization and the company support on the portal has improved. Speaking about plugins, plugins are a system to extend Expo configurations and to customize the pre-build phase of your managed build. And internally, the Expo CLI is using those plugins to generate and configure all the native code and the native layer. So they basically made that API available to us. And then, thanks to that, we can add every native code to Expo project. Also, Expo application services is their hosted service for building apps with Expo or even bare React Native. The CLI is super powerful for generating APKs, IPAs, managing deployments, store submission, metadata. And ES build, in particularly, makes building your app for distribution simple and easy to automate with your CI and CD systems. And by providing all the defaults that work well for Expo and React Native projects out of the box. I'm impressed. And the serotonin level is rising, finally. Oops, sorry. Moreover, do you remember the credential and code signing we talked before? Well, EAS credentials join the party. And thanks to this CLI, we can certificates and profiles are fully automated, and the generation is managed from the CLI. The same goes for the Android key stores, which is definitely good. And all those files are stored in your company account, and you can share them with ease with your team. Yoo-hoo! My joy reached a peak because a lot of my problems are now finally solved. And so, where are we now? We are in Verona. It's 2022 and almost the end of the year. And during my work career, I have learned quite a few things related to the developer experience in React Native nowadays. I feel like onboarding engineers, especially junior ones, is much, much easier. We have a lot of tools that help in the process. And speaking of tools, they are getting better. Complex concepts like credential management, deployment, store releasing, metadatas are easier to manage. Also, there is these cool things, Expo Router, which is in beta, and it's amazing. You should definitely try it out. And there has been a significant growth in the adoption of both React Native and Expo. I took this screenshot from NPM Trends site, which shows the downloads of Expo and React Native in the last 5 years. And as you can see from the chart, you don't code on Christmas. And besides that, from 2021, downloads skyrocketed. And this has been my experience with React Native. The last bit of advice I would like to give you is to start the journey on your own. I encourage you to do that and to reach out to me if you want to chat and discuss about it. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Come on. No questions. You already know everything about React Native and Expo. Okay, we got a question. Prepare.
You. I'm ready. Please be gentle.
So if you had to choose one technology, whether would it be Expo or React Native, and why? Because
Definitely Expo.
And
Definitely Expo. Because Evan Bacon, which is the owner of the dev tools at Expo, I talked to him like a few months ago. They are doing an amazing job. They are asking the community, what do you need for building application with this? They are trying to standardize all the and abstract all the implementation from the native layer, and they would like to add also web as a target, as a fully compatible target for Expo. So basically, with React Native, you could write one code base, and you can go on iOS, on Android, and even on the web. With the export router I mentioned before, they are, for example, making the deep linking of your front end super natural with just one link and one code base. You have one link that works on every platform, which is great. And yeah.
More questions? What?
I got other questions.
Is there a way to migrate a React Native application to Expo?
Yes, you can migrate a React Native application. Also, I think it depends on which version of React Native you are at. And the SDK of Expo has several versions, and the last 3 versions are always maintained from the Expo team. So probably if your version of React Native is compatible with the last 3 versions of Expo, you can definitely jump on that. You have to do some adjustments, and you probably should do that by steps. So you should move probably only one part of your app, and then when you have the whole system working, then you can switch.
More questions? No? I got one for you. Have
Oh.
you tried React Native for web?
Sure,
Sure?
but not in production.
Not in production. What do
Yeah.
you think about React Native for web?
I like the idea. I think it could be...
Everybody knows what React Native for web is. Yeah. Okay.
I like the idea. I think you can actually build with one code base an app that works on 3 platforms. And I think it's not ready yet for production, but probably in the next year, it will be possible to do that.
I have an application in production with
Really?
React Native for web. So,
Woo!
so it's ready.
Okay, perfect.
No, I know there's some quirks, but
Yeah.
it's ready. Most of it is ready.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, we can close the talk. Okay. Thank you.
I love you.